Deputy District Attorney Anne-Marie Rosa, with today's lesson on attempted crimes in California. An attempt is defined in California Penal Code Section 66(4), CALCRIM Number 460, attempt other than attempted murder, and CALCRIM Number 600, attempted murder. Let's start with CALCRIM 460. To prove that the defendant is guilty of a crime, other than murder which I will discuss later, the people must prove that 1. The defendant took a direct but ineffective step toward committing the offense, and 2. The defendant intended to commit the offense. A direct step requires more than merely planning or preparing to commit an offense or obtaining or arranging for something needed to commit an offense. A direct step is one that goes beyond planning or preparation and shows that a person is putting his or her plan into action. A direct step indicates a definite and unambiguous intent to commit an offense. It is a direct movement towards the commission of the crime after preparations are made. It is an immediate step that puts the plan in motion so that the plan would have been completed if some circumstance outside the plan had not interrupted the attempt. A person who attempts to commit an offense is guilty even if, after taking a direct step towards committing the crime, he or she abandoned further efforts to complete the crime, or if his or her attempt failed or was interrupted by someone or something beyond his or her control. On the other hand, if a person freely and voluntarily abandons his or her plans before taking a direct step toward committing the offense, then that person is not guilty of an attempt. To decide whether the defendant intended to commit a crime, the judge will provide separate instructions on the elements of that crime. The court has a sua sponte duty to instruct on the elements of the crime of attempt when charged, or, if not charged, when the evidence raises a question whether all the elements of the charged offense are present. See People v. Breverman, 1998. CALCRIM 600 adds the elements of 1. The defendant took at least one direct but ineffective step toward killing another person or a fetus, a baby in the mother's womb. And 2. The defendant intended to kill that person or fetus. Before I get into some examples, I'll discuss the penalties for an attempt pursuant to PC 66(4). If the crime attempted is punishable by imprisonment in the state prison or in a county jail, the punishment shall be 1/2 the term of imprisonment prescribed. For example, if the punishment for robbery was 7 years in prison, then the punishment for attempted robbery would be 3.5 years in prison. However, if the crime attempted is willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder, as defined in PC Section 189, the person guilty of that attempt shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for life with the possibility of parole. If the crime attempted is any other one in which the maximum sentence is life imprisonment or death, the person guilty of the attempt shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for 5, 7, or 9 years. So, what does this all mean? It means that the defendant must actually take a direct but ineffective step toward committing. It is a direct step beyond planning or preparing to commit a crime, or obtaining or arranging for something needed to commit that crime. For example, say a person wanted to rob a bank and they planned to do it with a gun. They go out and buy the gun. Is this an attempt yet? No. An attempt requires a direct movement towards the commission of the crime after preparations are made. It is an immediate step that puts the plan in motion so that the plan would have been completed if some circumstance outside the plan had not interrupted the attempt. So let's add to our scenario. The defendant buys a gun, writes a note that he is going to give to the teller demanding money. Do you have an attempt now? Likely not, but you are getting closer. Now the person goes to the bank, walks inside, and sees a cop standing at the window making a deposit. The cop looks at him, recognizes him as a parolee, and searches him, finding the note and the gun. Now you are likely to get a conviction for attempted bank robbery because they have met all of the elements of the attempt. On the other hand, if that same person chickens out on the way to the bank and freely and voluntarily abandons his plans, then that person is not guilty of attempted bank robbery. There also has to be the possibility of completion of the crime. In other words, you also have to know that the crime can be completed. You can't use the defense of impossibility unless you knew it was impossible to begin with. For example, if you open a cash register at a store with the intent to take the money inside, and you find out the cash register is empty. It still may be an attempt because you didn't know beforehand that the cash register was empty. Physical impossibility can also be a defense. For example, you can't kill a dead body. You may have the intent to kill a person, break into their house and shoot them in bed, only to find out they died of a heart attack several hours earlier. If a body's dead already, you can't kill it again. There is no attempted murder in this scenario. I'm Deputy District Attorney Rosa, and that is your lesson on attempted crimes in California.